Good afternoon and welcome to today's webinar. The theme of today is call tracking metrics and the Google Data Studio. We're going to be demoing both of our connectors. With this presentation, we're going to be just jumping right in. So I'm going to wait till just a minute after to make sure that everyone has a chance to come into this. So let me see, I think I did put together one poll for you guys. So let's just take a quick poll. Which is what call tracking metrics plan are you on? We have our business plan, our marketing plan, our contact center plan, a legacy plan, or not a customer yet. And the only reason I bring this up is that the Data Studio is only offered on our marketing and contact center plans. It could possibly be offered on some of our legacy plans, and I'd be happy to show you how we can check and see if that if you're on those plans, if you qualify for this. So let's take a look. All right, well, it actually looks like most everyone, at least everyone who participated, is on the marketing plan. So excellent. We should be in good shape then. Let's go ahead and hide those results. All right, well, let's go ahead and jump into this. So again, the theme of today is Google's Data Studio and our connectors with them. So I'm going to be using a test account that I've created. So to get to our integrations, we go to our settings tab here, and then we come over to integrations. And then we have our Data Studio right here. Okay. So it's going to give you a little preview of what the setup would look like. If we come here and open this up, it will actually show us our API. Oh. And then we have two different connectors that we use. One is our call log connector and one is our activity report connector. So I like to call this our two flavors. And then with each flavor, they have their own template that they report to. So this one right here would be the connector that we use for the activity reports. And this would be the template that we use for the call log. So one of the things that I like to do when I'm building these reports out is I always want to compare apples to apples. So when I'm pulling data and making sure I'm building my reports, if I'm pulling from the call log, I'm going to create a time frame in the call log with all the same filters just to make sure that I have built it correctly. Same with the activity reports. So that's a pro tip right there. So to get started, let's start with the activity reports connector. So to do so, we just click in and that's going to navigate us right to it. It's going to ask us to authorize. I'll pull all this up and say allow. Then it's going to ask us for our API credentials, which is not there. Oh, there it is. Yep, I can't grab it from there, no problem. We'll come here and I can grab it from here and then head back over. Now, one of the big differences between the call log and the activity reports connector is that for the activity reports, we're only going to be pulling in one dimension at a time. So with those, they require a little bit more on the building front. So first thing we want to do is specify which account we'll be pulling from. And then the next thing we need to do is select our dimension. So for the first one, I'm going to start with tracking numbers. And then we have some additional filter options that we can do before we import the data. I typically like to handle all of my importing or all my filtering once we already have all the data in place. And then if we scroll to the bottom here, this is how we enable using the templates. So by default, it will be checked. Okay, and then we'll simply hit connect. Here we go. So here it's going to show me all the different metrics and dimensions for this connector. Now, again, when using the activity reports connector, we're going to have to do multiple connections. So I do think it's a best practice to rename them from here. So what I like to do is highlight over, and then I can put in the account ID. And then I'm just going to say that this is for the tracking number, so that this way I know what account I'm working with and what dimension I'm working with my connectors. Okay. Something else I think is pretty handy that the Data Studio offers is the ability to test these before we export the report. So I can hit Explore, and this will let me play with the data so I can get a feel for it. So of course it says none. If I come here, I can play with the different graphs. And I think it's probably just the time frame. So we can come back and then hit Create Report, Create. And then our template will automatically load. What it's going to do is it's going to try to map all the data from one dimension, which in this case, one dimension won't work for all of these. So that's why we're going to see things like no data here, why the map is going to be empty, because this is going to be a geo dimension, not a text dimension. So let's go ahead and click into the report. Now, one of the things I want to do, since this is a sample account, is I'm going to expand my date frame to be a lot larger, because that way I'll have some more data to report on. So there we go. So now, as you see, it's going to auto-populate. Now we're seeing no data right here because this is going to be comparing time frames, and there is no time frame before these. Okay. So if I wanted to come in, and now you can see my connector here is going to be clearly named so that I know that it is, this account and this tracking number, or a tracking number is the dimension that I'm working with. Now with our templates, we have pre-built all the logic for it. So if we were to come here, all the filters and everything will be in place. If you're creating your own reports, you'll have to start from scratch. Okay, so now we have it's going to be our tracking numbers, our period unique, our total, our average ring time, our average talk time, our total time. Now for this one, for inbound and outbound, that's not going to report through a tracking number dimension. So what I would need to do is add an additional dimension. So to do that, I can actually head back over to my integration, go to my Data Studio, and I'm going to create another connector. Now for the inbound and outbound, what I'm going to be looking for is the dimension of type. So that's going to be for the inbound, outbound, and text. So here we go, and then I can hit connect. So now again, I would recommend naming this, and I'm going to say type, so that way I'll be able to identify it. Now in this case, I'm just going to hit explore because I don't want to create a new report. And then I will come into this report, and then every time you add a new connector, you're going to have to refresh the page, and then I can pull from that connector. Unfortunately, it doesn't auto update. So we'll give that just a minute. Okay, now for this one, I'm pulling from, again, the wrong dimension, but I should be able to come in, and now I have my dimension of type, and I'm going to add that to the report. So here we go. So because this is from the template, it already has the filters pre-built for you. So I can actually show you what that looks like. So if we click edit, it's going to say look to include the direction that is equal to inbound. And then I'm going to want to do the same for my outbound. Just make sure I'm using the correct connector. And then, like I said, I didn't have any during that time frame. And same with our total text. And then this one as well, I should do by type. There we go. So pretty quickly, I was able to update that data. Now, for the call map, this is looking for a location field, which we don't have. So I'm going to have to go in and create another connector. And I can put that in, then hit connect. Oops, I didn't put my dimension. So I'm going to put in state. Let's find state. Here we go. Then tell it to connect. And then again, it's really important to name them, especially when you're using the activity report connector, because you're going to have to make a lot of different connections. So I'm going to say state. And then I'm just going to hit explore so that saves, and then come back to my main report. Now again, from here, I'm going to have to refresh, which will allow the report to update. Okay, and then I'm going to want to update that to here. Say yes, it's going to add it to the report. And then boom, it auto recognizes it. So pretty easy to work with these. Again, I always like to check the data inside a CTM. So let's see, it looks like we're looking at, where's my total? A total for this time frame of 31 calls. So let's go ahead and double check that inside of the activity reports. So to do that, I would go to reports, activity report. And then I just want to make sure I'm using the same time frame. So again, this is a test account, so we're using a large time frame. And we'll hit apply. And we should be looking for the magic number of 31. I might need to add in a few other fields. It should go up, and now we are seeing the correct number here. So again, I always like to double check them just to make sure that they're lining up properly, which it looks like we are, so that's good news. So from here, we can continue to build. If I wanted to add additional charts in, I could, come to any chart. Maybe I wanted to see a pie chart. One little thing that irks me is that it always drops it right here. And it's going to default to the last dimension that I was using. So this is actually going to be calls by state. Not so bad. And then I can go to my view. I like to go to the view because it's very interactive, so I can actually hover over and see how many calls I've had from each area. Now we're located in Maryland, so that's why that seems to be the heavy one. And then this makes sense also if we go back. So I've had a total of 31 calls. Looks like they all were desktop, so that makes sense that there's no mobile. And then this will just be reflecting 16 here, 16 here, so pretty much all the same. So that is the activity reports. Let me see, I think I can share this. Let me create a shareable link. Copy it, and I'll put it in the chat if you guys wanted to take a look at it. Oh, it can just view. So public? Second one. Okay. That was fine. Teamwork to get this right. All right. Yeah, there's the link. I don't know if it's the same. And then I'm going to put this in the chat so you guys can check this out if you want. There you go. Okay. So if you have any questions, feel free to type them in and we'll address them at the end. But that, for the most part, is the activity reports. Just the big difference between them and the call log is we're going to be doing one dimension at a time, while when we do the call log one in a minute, we're going to be pulling in all the dimensions at the same time. So let's take a look at that. So I'm actually just going to close all of these. Whoops. Boom, boom, boom. And there we go. And so I like to use this page as my home base for adding everything. So I'm going to go to my call log connector. And allow. Put my key in. And I put my account, and I'm going to allow it to use agency. And if I wanted to do any filtering, I could do that right here, but I'm good with that. I'm going to allow the parameter sharing. Okay, so it's pulling it all in. Now, when it comes to creating call log connectors, it's not as critical to update the names, but if you're an agency and you're pulling from multiple accounts, you might want to name it by the account or put in the account ID like I am. It's really just however clean you like your data to be. So then I can go ahead and hit create report. And it's going to start autofilling. Now, again, one of the great things about the call log template is that it's going to be pulling from all the different dimensions so that I don't have to do a ton of different connectors. So my time frame by default is pretty small here too. So let's go ahead and make this much larger. Just make it December so we can see some more data. So that's just going to update. Sorry, it's taking a minute because it's actually pinging our API and then it's extracting all the data. Okay, so now it is a lot more updated. So here we can see all of our different agents that have been taking calls, the total amount of calls, how that number has been changing over time. This is one of the things that I think is pretty cool, is that all this data is coming through and it's showing us the comparison. That's one of the things that our reports are lacking a little bit inside of CTM that we're working on improving. So it gives you some instant snapshots of how things have changed. And then, you know, it's going to auto map again. We don't have to do all the different connectors. So we can see our calls by state. We can see our tracking sources, the total calls to the source, and how those have changed over a time frame. And then here, this is going to be the total amount for the account, as well as the total scored calls that we have, how much has been marked as converted. And then we put these little templates in here. So if you wanted to map this to your events and analytics, you could do that. Same for if you're doing call sales, and same to Google Ads. So you'd have to use Google's connectors for those. So again, this one's real easy because it really kind of does all the work for you. And this is pulling from the agency. So this is actually showing under my agency all the different agents and all the different, so this is more like an agency dashboard. So that's pretty cool. So one of the things that I wanted to show you as well, actually, let's real quick go over these. So again, we do have all the logic already applied for these. So it's going to have it already configured here with the filters in place. So same with forms. You can see we have a filter for forms. So this is really all pre-configured for you. So it's really plug and play, which is really nice. Those ones don't. But yeah, pretty cool. And that is that connector. So I'm actually going to pull this one up again. Go back into this report. I want to show you how to add multiple clients. So from this one, I connected to just one account. And this was all pulling from, let me go edit this, from the Jessica Michaels account. So now I'm just going to name this Jessica Michaels. Yep. And if I wanted to, I could put in the account ID or something. But what I'm going to do is hit Control All and Control C. I'm going to say Add Page. I want to paste all this in. Okay. So from here, I'm going to make this, I'm going to pull for a different sub account, which is going to be a Peter Bacon account. So it would be his stats. So now I need to create another connector, and I'm basically going to duplicate everything I did and just change the information a little bit. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. So we're going to jump into the other account. And we're going to create a connector for the activity. Put that in. Then for this one, I'm going to do by tracking source again. So scroll down and then hit connect. And then for this one, this is again why it's really important to rename these. I'm going to hit this and then say, tracking source. And then I'm just going to hit explore. So that way it adds it. Now again, now that I'm here and I'm in this, I'm going to hit refresh because that's going to add my connector. I can see we actually have people viewing it. So yay, people are logging in. No, I didn't paste it even. That's going to bother me. So now what I'm going to want to do is update these with the new credentials. So what I'm going to do is get out of this one and add my new one, which I believe is this one. There we go. And it's going to map from this new sub account now. Now what's nice is I don't actually have to wait for it to auto load. So the right one, yes. And kind of click through real quickly. Yep. So this way, I'm just real quick updating all of these to reflect the new sub-account information. Now, because this is the activity report connectors, I'll have to make a few more connectors. I'll have to do one for the direction and then one for the state, and then that should map it all properly. I'll update this one. And this one. Okay, so let's go ahead and create another connector. I'll do two more, one for state and then one for type again. Paste that in, and then we'll come down to type. So again, type is direction. So I saw somebody commented in that it looks like you can potentially end up with a large amount of connectors. Absolutely. If you're using the activity reports connection, yes, because you're going to do one dimension at a time. So that's really the big difference between the activity reports and the call log reports, because the call log is going to give you everything all at once. Yeah, it would be one connector with multiple data sources rather than one data source per connector. So I actually find it a little bit easier to build with the activity reports, but you're going to need to create a lot more connectors. So each one kind of has its pro and its con. So let's go ahead and update these. So I want to make sure I'm in the right type, add it to it, and then quickly go through this. Yep, here it is. Type, and this one would be type as well. This one. So it looks like my data is lining up, which is always nice. If I had, 10 inbound calls and 137 outbound calls and no text, that should equal a total of 147. So it's always nice to see that. And then when we come down here, we can also see that we've had 147 desktop calls. So it doesn't look like that many people are calling from their mobile phones. This is by state, so that looks like it needs to be the last one that we do here. So let's create one more. Then I'll make this one state. Whoops, not status. And then yep, gotta name it. Naming I really think is the most important part, because otherwise you'll just find yourself really lost. If you don't know if all your data connectors are named the same thing, it's not going to be very helpful for you. So now I just need to come here and I need to refresh so that I get my new connector. We're at this one. Oh, don't know why this one got mad. It might just be frozen. So there we go, it's all updated. So now if I go from page to page, I can actually see the different data reporting. So I can go view and see it live change. Then go to the next page, which will be another client, and see the difference between the two. So that's really a lot of the ins and the outs with dealing with the template and the data as it comes in. So I thought it'd be fun to talk a little bit about what we do and what we don't do. So one of the things, we send all the data from our activity reports and from our call log. So there's been a lot of confusion around this. So if you can find it in the call log, technically you should be able to find it in the call log connector, and same with the activity reports. So what do we not do? We do not provide a connector for our real-time agent dashboards yet. So things like status and things that would be reporting here, we don't have metrics on at this time. These are actually pulling from a totally different database, and that is something that we are going to be looking to build out in the future. But at this time, anything that really reports in the real-time agent dashboard does not report inside of the data studio. And honestly, the data studio isn't designed to be a real-time dashboard. So right now it's really just not a good fit. So we're going to be looking into ways to improve on that and build on it. But at this point, most anything that you can see or find or report on in the real-time agent dashboards are not going to go into the data studio. So I know we've had a lot of requests for that, but there's just something we're working on. At this point, we can't accommodate that. So we have our activity reports. So really anything that you can build here, you can build in the Data Studio. The difference is they're going to give you some more flexibility on the charts. And then if you have any saved reports, we can actually export them this way. One of the things to be aware of if you're doing it this way is that there is a caching issue. So if you do if I were to do an import or an export of this right now, it would be cached. So I'd have to wait a little bit for that information to update, but that is pretty cool way to do it. Okay. So let's see, I think I've covered most everything. Let's go back. So we have our connectors, our two flavors. Again, so the call log is going to be it's going to be unaggravated data, while the activity report is aggravated data. So I think the activity reports are easier to build. The call log you can do so much more with, but you need to be a lot more particular and a lot more careful building it out, as you're going to have endless amounts of options. So is this my call log one? Yep. So as you see here, we have, I think last I checked, it was over, I think maybe 700 different fields you can pull from. And then when you're working with each individual field, you have to think about how these are actually built as well. So we're doing counts, averages, how are we filtering, how are we sorting? There's a lot that comes into play, which is awesome in so many ways that we are able to have all that flexibility. It's just make sure that you double check your work, because when it comes to reporting, we obviously want to make sure that we're reporting on the correct numbers and what you're expecting to see, because it is very easy to, do count instead of average and then, be reporting completely false information. So let's see, with that, I think we've covered pretty much everything. The only other thing I'm not sure if I mentioned is if you are an agency, you might want to connect with the agency API rather than the sub-account API, because with that, then you can build out multiple accounts reports. But if you connect with the individual sub-accounts API, that's when you're going to run into some errors. And I think we've seen a lot of that from the support tickets that we've got. But with that, let's take a look at the questions we have coming in. Okay, I think we've got a handful of them. Well, let me make the box bigger. Okay, so somebody says, what if you have multiple tracking numbers, one for Google, Bing, Facebook, display, and you only want Google and Bing to show for your PPC reports? So with something like that, you'd have to do some filters built into your reports. So this is where this stuff can get pretty tricky. So here we have our tracking sources. If I wanted to, in this case, I'm filtering for just calls, I could add a filter, create a new one. I would have to select my field. I think it's actually source is what it's called. Yes, source. And then I would have my condition probably contains, and then I'd probably want to say something like Google, and we could say or, and then I'd have to rebuild it out, but you'd have to create a logic to accommodate that. So then I'd want to do it again so that the source contains, maybe in this case, Bing, which is probably cap sensitive. I think it's lowercase. So it's going to say it is either Google or Bing, and then if I hit save, this should shrink up to real short of probably just Google AdWords ads. Yep. So in this case, I'm not tracking any Bing. So that can be accommodated or accomplished via filters. So great question there. Thank you for that. Somebody says, why are all the calls showing as desktop calls? That just means that they weren't made from a mobile phone. So that could be something like a desk line or, your desk phone or a home phone. So somebody says, is it possible to only connect a connector on the agency level and then filter for the individual sub-accounts within a report? I believe so. By account ID. So that would be, yep, right here. So we'd have to add that dimension in and then filter for the account ID. So great question there. Somebody's asking if we'll have access to this recording. Yes, we'll be adding this to our support hub. We have a recorded webinar section, so you'll be able to find it there. Okay. Somebody says, sorry, it doesn't let me expand the question box, so I can only read like 5 words at a time and I have to scroll. It says, I want to create a report that will show the tracking source of calls and the reported tag score. I give the call. I didn't see an example of reporting tags on the webinar. Will you show me an example of how to do this? So for the reporting tags, oh, they're probably in here. I believe those are actually under conversions. This would be the conversion amount, not the tag. No, it's in the drop down. I believe we can do that. Let me follow up with you in an email on instructions on how to do that. The tags are something we've actually been working on up until the minute of this webinar. So that is something we should have and be able to show you. So I'll follow up with you on that one. Search tag. Oh, these are actually tags from reporting tags.
Those are actual tags.
Yeah, so each individual tag is going to be its own metric, no dimension. So they all are there. You just have to build a report for each individual one, or it could be a report something like this, and then you pull over each individual tag. So lots of different ways we can do this. Okay, somebody says, as an agency, we would like to provide more automated reporting to push to clients on a monthly basis, end of month reporting. In that scenario, would it be better to do it under a connector per sub account? We would like to understand the problems we're using the connector at the sub account level. Well, if you're going to have multiple sub accounts, I would definitely connect it with the agency API, and that'll make it a lot easier. I don't think you'll run into as many errors. And then you would just build one per sub account. So that's really the only error, if I understood that right. Yeah.
Or you can make one report and just keep changing the data source.
Yeah, or I'm actually sitting with one of the engineers who helped build this, and I'm not sure if you could hear that. She said you could just make one report and then just yeah, and then just keep changing the data source. Yes, for the different sub accounts. So this was a template we created. You can create your own templates, just like I did in the activity report one. You just copy all of it, paste it in on another page or in another report, and then just start changing the data source. So great questions, guys. Okay. So with that, I'll give it another minute to see if we have any other questions coming in. Oh, I can share this one too. You have to go to view, add people. Oh, more. Copy. And here's this. There we go. So if anyone wants to check this one out. But so far, I think we released this a little bit ago. We've had a very large response from this. So we're excited about it. I did create a survey for after the webinar that's going to ask if you have any other ideas for templates, because I know that templates are definitely what people are looking for. But we just want to know, what do you guys want to see in these templates? So this was kind of what we put together. But we obviously want to know what you want and possibly, build out maybe one a quarter or something for you. But remember that these will not include real-time agent dashboard metrics and dimensions. People are asking if the webinar is going to be able to watch again. Yes, here, let me actually show you where we can find that in our Help Center. Oops. And then we have our recorded trainings, and it'll just be added to the bottom here. So as soon as it is done processing, so probably by the end of today, it'll be there. Yep. And let's see, I'll wait around, see if we have any other questions. Be happy to address them. I was at a conference, the Hero Conference in Philly, I believe last weekend or 2 weekends ago, and I was talking to a lot of prospects and other clients of ours, and what they said that they find very successful doing is actually running call log exports and then making a spreadsheet and pulling that data with a lot of other data and consolidating that all into one massive spreadsheet and then using that as a connector. They found that a really easy way to kind of combine our data with some other platforms' data rather than using connectors for each of them. I thought that was an interesting approach. So I haven't played with that one much. Okay. Well, it doesn't look like we're getting any more questions, so thank you all for attending. And yep, this will be posted online soon. So have a great day.